You're watching two people argue and you're thinking to yourself, should I step in and help get it back on track, or should I let it take its course? A situation every leader experiences, particularly when you're new, is to decide, do I step in and help the situation, or what you think is helping the situation, or take a step back and let people figure it out on their own? How to make that decision, how to determine when is the right time to step in, is what this video is about. And I'm going to show you the considerations that you need to think about when deciding. Hi, I'm Mike Targus, retired Marine, founder of Center Desk Leadership Coaching. I did 21 years in the Marine Corps leading teams and transitioned in 2013 into project management, engineering, and sales. I've been leading teams on that side ever since. So I've seen both sides, military and civilians, and I've seen some things that will help you develop your personal leadership style, or maybe the leadership in your team. And this channel is about leading the team you have, the people that you have coming to work for you every day, not the team you wish you had or the one you think you're going to have next year. How much presence from you is enough to make sure things are going the way they need to? It's pretty common to get advice on leadership that says, just kind of stay back, stay out of people's way, and let them work things out. And while you do need to delegate things and you do need to give people room to work, being totally hands-off is not the answer. And people don't need you involved in every decision. So which are the ones that they do need you? Because what you involve yourself in tells people a lot of things about you and what you think of how things are going. So you have to be deliberate and you have to get involved at the right time. So when's the right time? A lot of people feel like they've been micromanaged in their careers. You may have had a boss that you felt was overly controlling or just got involved in things that you should have just been able to do on your own. And if you have had that experience, then there is a pretty good likelihood that you're overcorrecting because you don't want to be like that person was. And while that is a noble thought, it's really based on fear, the fear of a perception that maybe you are the same kind of leader, overly controlling. And it shouldn't be based on fear. It should be based on what you get yourself involved in, should be based on what you're trying to achieve. Because if you stay out of things too often, that sends a signal as well. And what you may interpret as, I'm going to be cool, I'm going to let people work, I'm not going to be that kind of leader, you don't know that they're interpreting it that way. They could be interpreting your lack of involvement as not being interested in what they're doing, or that you don't care about how things work out. And this is especially important with your higher performers, the people who are more self-starting. On one hand, they don't need you involved in the daily grind of what they're doing as much, but those are also the same kind of people who are going to notice. They're going to have their own idea on how you should do your job. And that's not necessarily right or wrong, but they're going to have an idea of how involved you should be. And it's not that you need to do what you think they want from you. It's that you just have to be the best leader possible. And you have to understand that when accountability is unclear, then that makes it very difficult to make progress because nothing is actually completed. So one thing you should communicate with your team is, what are the types of things that you want to be involved in? Let them know the things that you see as your role in helping. And that doesn't mean that they're going to ask you to get involved every time, but at least they know what your interests are. Or maybe you could talk about that and develop those interests. Because your team is going to do a lot better when they feel like you are available if they need you. And just knowing that you're around is going to reduce the tension, the anxiety of the team overall, because they know if things get too difficult, they can go to you. So don't be proud of never stepping in to help. That's not a good approach to leadership. But really consider, ask yourself if you are overcorrecting because of the experiences. We're all a product of our experience. Have you had the experience of an overbearing, controlling, micromanaging leader in your past? And just think about it. Are you doing the opposite because of that instead of what needs to be done? And whether you get yourself involved or whether you intervene 1, 2, 20, or 100 times in a week on what's going on, that's not what matters. What matters is, are you involving yourself in the right situations? So what is the right situation? The way I like to think of it is, you got to take the long view. You got to be one of the people, all leaders, but you got to be one of the people that has taken a longer view. You're not just looking at where you are on the road. You're looking down the road and you're looking to the sides of the road. You're looking for kind of like a cone-shaped view of the future. So the things that you involve yourself in, you want to change what's called the trajectory of the organization, where we're going next. Solving discrete problems that people come across every day, you should be able to rely on them to do that. You stay focused down the road. And what are some of the situations where you want to consider, maybe I do need to be involved, even if people aren't asking you to come and get involved? They're the high risk, high exposure financially. You have customer confidence or company reputation are a couple big ones. When you get the feeling that people might be losing a little bit of confidence or trust in you or maybe other leaders in the organization, you want to get involved and see what that's all about. Safety, of course. And then you have to be present enough and know your people well enough to know that people on your team, they might have something going on the personal side, which, yes, you do need to be concerned with. Some people think leaders don't need to be concerned with that because you just deal with people at work. But if somebody's going through a divorce, if somebody's got problems with their kids, they're not going to be able to bring everything they can to the workplace. It's not that you need to know the details of that or pry in there if they don't want you to know it, but you have to be aware of that. Those are situations where you might have to show up a little bit more proactively and assure people that you're there to help. They have a lot of things on their mind, and you just might not be one of them, or work might not be one of them. In these situations, you have to realize that people rarely have the same priorities with each other and maybe even with you. So you have to keep your priorities not just clear, but as simple as possible and as straightforward as possible, and as few as possible too, if you can. So you've got the risky situations, you've got the priority situation. So when you do intervene, here's a big consideration for you is when you do intervene, it should simplify, help, facilitate, not complicate. So if you get involved, people shouldn't walk out of that experience with essentially more to do, more on their plate. Simply assigning more work is easy. Anybody can do that. A real leader is going to streamline and they're going to take things off people's plate so they can get the most important things done. And you recognize these situations early, you can prevent. If you wait, if you don't pick up on these situations soon enough, then you're correcting. It's a lot more costly. So your role, stability, bringing stability to the team. So something to consider here is, do you involve yourself in the easy things, in the low risk situations that the team deals with? Or are you more inclined to get involved and make it harder for yourself, but get involved in the high risk, more costly situations that they have to deal with as well? Because they don't need you for the low risk stuff. They can probably figure that out on their own. They really need you when the chips are down and there's a lot of money at stake. That's where you got to get involved. Now, when you have to go the next level up, whether it's your people to you or you to your boss, it does kind of feel like you've lost control at times, or it's a little bit of a failure. I can't handle this, so I got to ask for help. And what you want to do is you want to make sure the people on your team know that you do not see it as a problem to get you involved. And if you're getting pulled into more routine things, maybe that the people should be figuring out on their own, you talk about that. But you don't want your starting point to be that people are afraid to escalate. And we've all been tempted to wait for more information. Or I don't think we need to act right now. Let's get another week of data, or let's wait a month or something like that. But these are the situations where you gotta like trust your gut. If it doesn't feel right, talk about it with a couple other people. Because if you get involved too late, it's already more costly. Get in early and prevent. And that's just the typical discussion that you might have on a routine meeting. People aren't keeping track of what you talk about like that. So just bring it up, ask, and if you get the feeling people are sure there's no problem, then that's fine too. In fact, that's a sign of an experienced leader or a really good leader is they're going to know that when they need to come in to make a decision, that it's going to be based on incomplete information. If you have all the information, if it's all yeses, then anybody can make that decision. But why they need you because there's uncertainty, and the leader needs to be the one to come in. And this doesn't, by the way, need to have anything to do with your title. It could be just somebody that's really maybe experienced or understands the business really well. They can come in and lead through a decision by recognizing the key points of it, and without having the full picture, make a confident decision that everybody can get on board with. And with all that, knowing when that decision needs to be made, the timing of it, that reflects judgment, and that's as important as the decision itself. So something to consider here then is trust your gut, and consider whether or not you are just letting some things go when you know it's not right, or you know something is a little bit off track, and just bring it up. But just letting things flow when you have a really strong feeling that it's something's off track is not a good way to go. Because something to consider there is what you really believe is subconscious. So you have experiences and you develop beliefs, but you don't go through all your beliefs when you're making decisions. These are your subconscious drivers. These are the things that are driving that gut instinct that you do have. So you got to realize that what is deep inside your mind is making its way out little by little and pushing you in a certain direction. So you got to listen to that. Another set of considerations here are with regard to differentiating. There's some things that the team can just handle, and then there's some things that they really do need your help on. And a couple of those are like really strong personalities. Maybe you've got people that have worked in the business a long time. They're type A personalities. They're very extroverted and in people's face all the time. And you may have some people that need to get things done that are not like that. So they're just getting steamrolled with either the way we've always done it, or just the personality differences might prevent that. Or you might have managers in the organization, maybe peers of yours is a good way to look at it. You got other leaders in the organization, managers who are making it difficult for your team. That's a good situation to consider stepping in and helping, because your people are probably not going to tell the manager in the other department no, or what to do, or without it being kind of messy. Because when people are dominated like that, then how things are communicated, the communication within the team, it changes. It's not free flowing. People are going to adjust what they say to either avoid situations or create other situations that may be counterproductive. You got some loudmouth on the team that's just won't shut up about the way they like to do things, which is not the way you need them done. You're going to notice that people avoid that person. And the one thing to consider, I mean, you definitely cannot avoid that person. But if you notice that people are increasingly silent when that person's talking, or they just avoid them entirely, this is a classic situation that you need to get involved. And it's not going to be as simple as telling people to get along, but you need to be present. So you want to be a little bit more involved in how things are done. This might be an example to get in a little bit of the how things are done when you got these kind of interpersonal clashes going on. Because if people cannot say what they think needs to be done, if they can't communicate freely, they're going to resent you as their leader for not being able to make that environment one where they can do that. And then think about this. The people on your team are already aware of these interpersonal problems before you probably get wind of it yourself. Even if you're present, if you spend a lot of time around your people, they're living it. So what happens if you categorize these kind of problems as those that you should not get involved with? The dysfunction just starts spreading like a cancer, okay? And you cease to become the real influencer leader in the group because you're not providing any value. People have to survive on their own. And then eventually they just cut you out of the problem or the situation entirely. And you're really nothing more than probably an overpaid worker. So you want to consider, what things can the people on my team really not handle on their own? Not because they're not skilled enough to do so, but what are the organizational barriers or the personality barriers that they're experiencing, and get right in there and help address those. You have to realize that if you are a manager, mid-level, or maybe even senior, in fact, the more senior you get, the more it's important to realize that people are going to bring you probably less controversial information. They're going to try harder to tell you the best possible situation. They're going to try to word things in the best possible way when they're communicating risky situations. So that's something that you need to be aware of, is if you're expecting a certain amount of information with a certain level of detail coming your way and you're not getting it, and you got to go through, you got to make sure people understand the types of things that you want to hear about. But if you are detecting a decrease in that amount of information, you probably got some nervousness. You probably have people that are bringing you that information, as a risk, not to the business necessarily, but to themselves. So you have to go down and get it. In other words, it's not a natural flow of information up toward you, especially when things are coming off track. So when you go down there and you get the information and you ask people what's going on, or better yet, you have established a set of information criteria, requirements that you want, you go down there and you pull that information out. It's gonna tell people that it's okay to now tell the story, because it's no longer, you're no longer being passive in your leadership style. You're being active and going to the source. And just doing that is going to open the door for people to really tell you more of what's going on, which is what you should want in the first place. And then when you do that, you have to pay attention to your reaction. So let's just say it's an example of bad news. You have a project that looks like it's going to lose a lot of money. And you go down there to find out what's going on. And they tell you, yeah, for these reasons, it looks like we're going to run over the budget by this amount. How you react, you got to pay attention to how you react to that. So it doesn't do you really any good to get mad on the spot. You may be mad, but if you don't pay attention to your reaction to that, that will alter the amount and quality of information coming back to you as you work through the problem. But if you can make it clear, and people are going to know, they're not going to want to make mistakes and they're not going to want to do poor work. If some of those practices are happening, then you can help address that. But just because the information is not communicated to you doesn't mean the problem doesn't exist. So you might as well do whatever you can to get that bad news out early to you so it can be dealt with. And if it's the same people or the same process breaks happening time and time again, that is addressed separately. But you don't want your good people trapped in a situation where they feel like they can't communicate with you about what's really going on. So consider whether or not you're waiting to be approached with information, or you're being proactive and going down and ensuring you get it by going to talk to the people involved. What exactly are you doing when you go get involved in a situation firsthand or personally as the leader? If you're not communicating the plan, if you're getting involved during execution, what you should be trying to achieve is stability. So you're going to make sure things are on track. And if they're not on track, you're going to give people information and rearrange priorities or take priorities off their plate so that things get back on track and stable. And then you're back out of there. And why do I say it like that? To get back out of there? Because you need to make sure that the people that are responsible for execution or their aspect of the execution retain the accountability for making sure things get done how they need to get done. If you swoop in to fix a problem and then stay there, you're going to take that responsibility back for the work and then thus the accountability for making sure that you get the result you need. Is there a time and a place to do that? Yes, very rare though. And if it's the most time sensitive, high cost situation where there's no time to do anything else but fix it and move on. Everything else, you want to get in, stabilize, and get out of there because you want people to develop a sense of accountability. And if you're around, it's just not going to happen. And then you can have a situation where they're just gonna expect you to come in and get involved. And you don't want that either. That's different from free flow of information where you know what's going on. You don't want people to plan on you coming in to fix things. So go in, stabilize the situation, pay attention to how people made decisions, give them feedback on the judgment that they're using to execute, and assure them that you're available if and as needed in the future. So the consideration here is, are you fostering a culture? Are you creating a team that will take a highly proactive approach to execution, but also know that they can come to you when needed? And what are the things that they need you for is those high cost, high exposure, high risk or interpersonal situations or things that have to do with authority. You vote with your time. Hopefully you heard that expression, but the things that you spend your time on are the things that you're telling people without saying it those are the things that are most important to you. You vote with your time. So if you're working on your own stuff only all the time, what does that tell them about what they're working on? It's less important than what you're working on for yourself. And you can say, no, I care about what you're doing. If you care about what other people are doing, then you're going to show interest and you're going to actually spend some time to make sure they're doing it well. The same goes for the things that you get yourself involved in. If you get involved in the small, mundane tasks and avoid the angry customer call, for example, then you're telling people that for whatever reason, the easy stuff is more important to you. And why is it more? How could that be more important than the angry customer call with a lot at stake? Because your safety, your personal safety, is most important. You want to avoid the angry customer and gravitate to the low risk stuff. And the reason is nobody would say that's better for the business, but what it does tell people is your self-preservation is taking priority. On the other hand, if you get involved predictably with situations that are difficult for people and that may be a little bit out of their ability to handle on their own, if they can count on you, and not just count on you, but expect you to show up during those situations, you're going to get a lot of confidence in you from the team. You're going to feel that. They're going to come to you with meaningful stuff, and they're going to feel comfortable working on the routine, maybe not just routine, but the detailed tasks that they're responsible for. They'll feel comfortable just doing that on their own and not bringing you into that. But if you're haphazard or unpredictable with regard to when you show up, then people just never know. They're on guard. It's just not a good, healthy environment. You want people to be able to focus down on what they're doing. And if there's a chance you just show up for random reasons, they're not going to be able to like take those big chunks of time and devote them to deep thought and thorough work, good solid work on what they need to do. And if you don't think people are noticing what you spend your time on, think again. That may be one of the top things on their mind is, when is my manager? When is my leader? When do they show up? The classic example is they only show up to take credit when something happens that's good. But if you gain a reputation for being there for the hard, difficult work that needs to be done, their respect for you is going to go up quick. So consider the example you're setting, the shadow you cast. I like to say, what shadow are you casting by the things that you get yourself involved in? And the last point here in this video is that you don't exist as a leader because success is guaranteed. The opposite. You're there because anything could happen. And your role is to make sure that whether you're in a frontline manager role, mid-level, or senior leader, but your role is to make sure that the team progresses along the plan, which means you're going to have to make decisions when you don't have all the information. If all the information was crystal clear and available, people would make the decisions on their own. They wouldn't need you. And it's not a good feeling when you don't have a lot of information. I mean, your team feels that too. But one of the things that you do when you get involved is you assure them that, well, you take that off of their shoulders to have to decide without that information. Now, you do want to be a little bit careful of making decisions for them that they should be making. So you have to differentiate what is in their realm of responsibility to handle on their own. And again, it's the high risk, customer confidence, company reputation, safety, all of these considerations, or the hierarchy, the authority issues, those might be better candidates for you to get involved with and support. But in all those situations, there's going to be some level of uncertainty. And when you show up at the right time, you're going to take a big burden off of your people. And timing that out in one of those situations, responding and just saying, okay, understand, you've done all you can, I got this. They'll remember that forever. But if you don't involve yourself in those situations, essentially people are going to ask, why do I need you? Because they don't. So consider your selective involvement as like a lifeline to the team when it's needed. When it's not needed, don't provide it. Let them work on their things. But if you don't get involved in these situations, it's really going to undermine your credibility. Like I said, people are going to wonder why they even need you. What is your role there? And you're not going to feel great about the job that you're doing. as a leader. Okay, now let's review, and here's 3 principles that should help guide your decision making in these situations. The first one is action provides flexibility. So getting involved at the right time, at the right situation is going to allow you more options as you go forward. Said another way, waiting is less preferable to recognizing situations and getting involved earlier at the right time. Number 2, your presence should reduce friction. When you show up, it's for the purpose of getting things stabilized and allowing people to get back on track themselves. Your role is not to complicate. And think of it this way, people should look forward to your involvement. And then a third principle is your involvement signals what your priority is. You vote with your time. And in short, the things that you're not involved with or never ask about, people are just going to inherently read that as things that you're not interested in. And 5 actions you can execute starting today. Define escalation thresholds. Do people even know what you want to know about? I want to hear about over budget. I want to hear about quality problems, and I want to hear about customer complaints. Things that are that cut and dry, simple, straightforward. A lot of times we don't even tell people that's what we want to know about. So make sure you tell them. Number 2 is observe the interpersonal relationships or behavior in the team. This is part of your duties as a leader. Remember the things that people have going on in their personal life at home. You don't want to necessarily pry into the details of it, but you have to be aware of big things going on in the team with individual people. That is part of your responsibility as a leader. Number 3, get used to deciding with uncertainty or limited information. Get in, make a decision, and then get back out and let people carry on. But it's always going to be with some level of uncertainty. 4 is keep ownership where it belongs. So get involved, help make decisions, help people get back on track. Don't take work off people's plate unless it's not appropriate for them to have it. Keep the work with the people so that they retain the responsibility to do the work and then are accountable for the result. And then 5, demonstrate your priorities, lead by example, get involved with the things that are most important to the organization, which as a leader should be the things most important to you. And that's it. Hopefully this video helped you decide a little bit more clearly on when to get involved and when to stay out of things. Consider liking and subscribing. I got some of these slideshows on my website, or my information is in the contact if you like these slideshows to use with your team. If you think I can help you or your team implement, get a hold of me. So until next time, vote with your time, get yourself involved for good reason to stabilize and get back out and let people work. Lead by example. See you next time. Thanks.